All right, today we're going to dive into one of the most unsettling true crime stories ever written. Anne Rule's masterpiece, The Stranger Beside Me. It's one of those stories that gets under your skin because it's about friendship, betrayal, and that terrifying moment you realize a monster could be someone you know and trust.
I mean, that one quote right there, it says it all, doesn't it? That's Anne Rule, trying to wrap her head around the impossible. How could the man she shared secrets with, the man she called her friend, also be one of the most infamous serial killers in history? To even begin to understand, we've got to go back to where it all started.
So, this story doesn't begin in some dark, spooky alley. No, it starts in probably the most ordinary place imaginable, a suicide crisis center in Seattle way back in 1971. And it's here that two people's lives are about to cross in a way that nobody could have seen coming.
To Anne, Ted Bundy was just Ted, a great guy. He was this smart, charming, and compassionate psychology student who seemed like he had a huge future ahead of him. They'd work these long, late-night shifts together, just talking about everything. She trusted him. He was her friend, plain and simple.
But here's the chilling part. At the very same time this friendship is growing, something else, something much, much darker, is starting to take root in the background. A real-life horror story was unfolding across the Pacific Northwest, and an entire city was about to be paralyzed with fear.
So in early 1974, it begins. Young women start vanishing, one after another, about one every month. And the details that emerge are just brutal. For the police, it was like they were hunting a ghost. This killer was a phantom, someone who could earn a person's trust in a moment and then just disappear with them. And this, right here, is the moment where everything starts to collide. Anne's personal world with her friend Ted and her professional world as a crime writer, they're on an absolute crash course, and the collision is going to be horrifying. Witnesses from a park where two women were abducted described the suspect as a handsome man with his arm in a sling. He called himself Ted. When the police released the composite sketch, you can just imagine the chill that went down Anne's spine. The name, the description, and that face in the sketch, it looked an awful lot like her friend, Ted.
So what do? Anne did the right thing. She picked up the phone and told the police her friend's name. But you have to put yourself in the cops' shoes for a second. They were flooded with thousands of tips. And this guy, Ted Bundy, a respectable, smart law student with no record, they just couldn't see it. He didn't fit the profile. Okay, now check this out because this is where the pattern becomes absolutely impossible to ignore. The murders are happening in Washington. Then, late '74, Bundy moves to Utah to attend law school. And just like that, the Washington murders stop cold. But then, guess what? A nearly identical string of murders starts up in Utah and then in Colorado. The killer hadn't stopped. He had just moved. For Anne, denial was probably the only thing getting her through. I mean, you want to believe your friend is innocent, right? You're looking for any other explanation. But as the evidence kept piling up, the awful truth was becoming impossible to escape.
And then things just start to unravel and fast. He gets arrested in Utah, then he's extradited to Colorado to face murder charges, and then he escapes. Not once, but twice, can you believe it? And his final desperate act is this absolutely horrific attack at a sorority house in Florida. The mask was completely off. So seriously, just put yourself in her shoes for a second. You've been holding out hope, clinging to any shred of doubt. What would it take? What's that one final, undeniable piece of evidence that would just shatter everything you thought you knew about someone you trusted so much? For Anne Rule, the final nail in the coffin wasn't a confession. It wasn't a fingerprint. It was something so much more gruesome and personal. In his Florida trial, the prosecution presented the key piece of evidence, a savage bite mark left on one of the victims that was a perfect dental match to Ted Bundy.
And her reaction, wow, it just says everything, doesn't it? The moment she heard that testimony, she literally ran to the bathroom and got sick. That was it. That was the moment the denial shattered and the horrifying truth became sickeningly real.
So Ted Bundy was eventually convicted, and his story ends with his execution. But the impact of what he did, and especially the way Anne Rule told that story, well, that created a legacy of its own. and it completely changed the true crime genre forever. Before he died, Bundy confessed to more than 30 murders. 30. And honestly, investigators are pretty sure the real number is far, far higher. It's just an unimaginable amount of devastation, all caused by one man who everyone thought was just the charming guy next door.
You know, the title of her book, The Stranger Beside Me, it's become more than just a title, right? It's a phrase we all instinctively understand. It captures that deep-seated fear that evil isn't always some shadowy figure. Sometimes it's the person sitting right beside you.
So, why do we still talk about this book all these years later? Because it's not just a list of facts and dates. It's a journey into the heart of darkness, told by someone who was actually there, who was friends with the monster. It forces us to look at the psychology of it all, how we trust people, and how that trust can be so horrifically betrayed. It really set the stage for true crime as we know it today. And that really brings us to the one final, haunting question that Anne Rule's story leaves us with. It's the question that sits at the very core of this whole thing, and it's one that might just stick with you for a while.